Do you agree that, it's time that we all wake up and take responsibility, even for our ancestors that did not know any better? Been waiting patiently to have this kind of conversation. Well, it's Wake Up with KC, and I have a very special guest that has studied martial arts, that is a veteran, and loves languages. And he has a very inspiring and motivational story about his life experience and his journey and his transformation. So please welcome Richard Rico. I like to say Rico. It just resonates with me. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Did you know also that Rico means delicious?
You know what? That just tickles my tongue.
It does. That's the point of it. It comes from Latin.
Ooh, I thought it was Spanish. It's actually
Latin.
Latin.
It's actually Spanish, but it comes from Rico. Like Rico means like when you taste something good. It's like esto sabe rico. This tastes good. It tastes delicious.
Oh, say that again.
Rico, esto sabe rico. That right there.
That does sound delicious. It's like my mouth is watering just hearing you say that.
I appreciate that. How you doing?
I'm doing good now that you're here, and you're a veteran.
Yeah, U.S. Army 31 Bravo.
Puerto Rico.
Yep, born and raised and educated.
And you study martial arts, and you fell in love with languages.
Yeah.
So
I'm a purple belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did this journey of yours start? Share with the audience.
Most of it just kind of just happened, you know. Most of it is a combination of factors that I just kind of like fell into, right? Mm-hmm. So first of all, where's my manners? Thanks for having me, and I apologize for being a few minutes late. That's on me. But thanks for having me, being patient. I came originally. I was born, raised, and educated in Puerto Rico, like the island, right? So I was born in a place called Aguadilla, which sounds very mouth-watering, but it's just a city in Puerto Rico. And what ended up happening is, growing up, I was a very nerdy kid. Like, not a lot of people mess with you in Puerto Rico. You know, people kind of keep to themselves. But people just really never had a sort of like respect for me, in the sense of like, people always wanted something, you know. There was always a give and take, and there was never something very like selfless, right? So languages was like one of the first things that I did, because at the age of 5, my dad was always insistent that I spoke English, right? Because my first language is actually Spanish. Most people don't know that. They just hear me talking. They're like, oh, that's such good. I'm like, nah, trust me, it's there. And my dad was always very adamant about learning English, because languages is an effective way of communicating. And that was like his thing. Like, to this day, I carry a little black book where I write a word, you know, that I see. And I normally write it 10 times in English and in Spanish, and then I write the definition. It's just that way I keep myself fresh. When I first started doing it when I was a kid, it was like about 100 to 200 words a day. Now it's about 10 to 30 a day I write down, you know, because there's always something you learn. So then when I went into high school, I went to what's called a commercial high school. This is the translation, but it's actually a vocational or tech school, right? Where you leave and you leave with a certification, right? Some people left with associates, but I was playing too much Pokemon, you know. And what ended up happening was, during my time there, I joined the FBLA, Future Business Leaders of America, and I competed in improvised oratory, and I just became a chirp every time we were on the trips. And I got trained by a teacher named Miss Torres, who realized that I knew more English than I let on, because I would fail the English test. In Puerto Rico, you used to have to take an English test to put you on a scale of like if you had to take conversational English or basic English. So I would always fail the test on purpose, just so I could take basic English, because I didn't have to do homework. Like, I knew how to do it. I know how to, explain a past tense verb. I know how to explain the future tense. I know how to change it, So did that for a while, and that's where like my beginnings came as an interpreter. I also used to charge my buddies money to do like their homework. Most people don't know about that. We actually had a lot of people that graduated because of me, because you had to know English back in the day. Like, you had to be able to write and everything. So a lot of people they never really told anybody, but they were paying me on the side to help them do their homework.
An entrepreneur already.
Oh yeah, dude. I used to hustle Pokemon cards. I used to go to tournaments, and if we'd win, you'd get, so in Pokemon, most people don't realize is when you win a tournament, like a league tournament, right? You get a pack of booster cards. Sometimes you would make money depending on what it was, and you would get like a badge. So what we would do is we'd open all the packs, and if we had something already, we'd just sell it. So we'd leave tournaments with like a couple $100 sometimes, and like no one ever bat an eye. It was just a way to have money in my pocket. And then turned 18, 19, and you change a little bit. The world isn't as easy as you think it is. I was homeless for a little bit, and that really helped a lot. Really like open your mind to like how things can be a little bit difficult and how things can be also very easy in life. Because when you're homeless, you only have two problems. You got to worry about eating, and you got to worry about where you're going to sleep. Right? When you're not homeless, you got to worry about the bills. You got to worry about taxes. You got to worry about the kids. You got to worry about this. You got to worry about that. So I look back at that time like as a lesson, and I try to like live life like that, pretty simple, right? And then I joined the Army in 2008, and I left for basic training January 8th of 2008. And I landed in Missouri, which I'd never seen the cold, or let me rephrase that. I've never seen snow or experienced the cold. And
that was an eye opener.
Yeah, because my recruiter never lied to me. But there was only one thing he said to me that wasn't very truthful. He's like, "No, you'll be all right. Go in shorts and a jeans. Shorts or jeans and a t-shirt. You'll be fine." That was not true. that was a very, very big omission of information on his part. But I survived basic, did AIT, advanced training as a military policeman, and then a month after graduating, I was in Iraq. Did some fun stuff there, and came back after 15 months, September 4 of 2009. And then started working as a patrolman. And like during that time, like you learn a lot, you see a lot of things and how people treat each other. Left the Army after a while. I went to Korea. I went to a couple other places, went on vacation to Japan and whatnot. And that's when like the hard times really came. Because when you get out of the Army, what people don't tell you is that nobody really cares. Like people care for like maybe 4 weeks out of the year. But the rest of the time, it's like, hey, you're back to society. You have to like figure it out. And that was really rough. Because it wasn't until like a couple years ago that I really like realized things, and like figured things out that work for me, for my life. And, here we are now. I've been training Brazilian jiu-jitsu for 8 years. I'm a purple belt under Kayotera and Brian Stuebner. If you know martial arts, you'll know Kayotera. He's a big guy. He's a very kind guy too. Very nice guy. Can be an asshole sometimes, but he means well. He's just his character, And I'm also an interpreter. I'm a certified Spanish interpreter. And, through there, I've accrued a little bit of fame as the language ninja for working cases with, very sensitive cases like human trafficking, child pornography, drugs, gang cases, wiretaps, and stuff like that. And recently in June, we decided to, after much thinking, we started a podcast called the Rico Podcast that got picked up on iHeartRadio, and it's doing pretty good. It's been pretty good. It's long format interviews, and here we are now on a podcast with you.
Oh, wow. So let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Since you've traveled, coming from an island, going to Missouri, then you went to Iraq, then you went to Japan and all that, and seeing what it's like in other countries,
Mhm.
was there an eye opener? Like, wow, I didn't even know that this even like existed, or I heard, but then when you went there, it was like a self-realization, like, oh my God, there's more to this than what I've been told.
You would have to give me an example, because the thing about me is I live my life day by day, minute by minute. Like, I plan things, right?
Hmm.
But I just absorb things. I don't ever really, like, I read the news, but I don't listen to the news. You know what I'm saying? I'm that type of person where it's like, you would have to give me a specific example. I'll do you one better. When I came to the States, it was culture shock. Like, hard. Like, fucking hard. Because, here in the States, I'll give you a prime example. Best example. Here in the States, you guys deal with, like, bullies and stuff, right? Well, we don't have that in Puerto Rico very much. Like, we don't. Like, we really, like, growing up, I never had, like, a bully. The way that things worked was, if you and I are friends, right?
Hmm.
And let's say, I'll use Steve as an example, as we were just talking, shout out to Steve, and let's say I tell you, hey, I don't mess with Steve. And you go, well, you know what, Richard, if you don't mess with Steve, because you're my friend, I trust your intuition, I trust what you see, I'm not going to mess with Steve. I'm not going to talk ill about Steve, but it's just, I don't talk to Steve. I don't deal with Steve. And it was like a way of just ignoring people. And that's how things were. So, like, here in the States, everybody, like, started giving each other, like, crap and, like, talking very ill. And I'm like, dude, what is this? Like, what is this? This is weird. Like, I was always brought up, if you don't have something nice to say, then shut the fuck up. You don't have to say anything, because what you put out there is what, becomes. And I kind of lost that, being immersed in American culture. I kind of lost myself into that. And, I came back to it, thank God. But traveling a lot, like, you see different cultures and, like, different ways that they live. And, and there's different laws too, there's different social standards, which is what I like to tell people. Like, the social standards are very different. Like in Korea, for example, teenagers and stuff like that, when you hear them on the subway, they're talking about going to college. They're talking about, oh man, I'm trying to get this job and I'm trying to land this university in the States and my English gonna get better. And, like, in the United States, to my understanding, that's not the case. So it's a very cultural shock thing. In Japan, one thing that impressed me about Japan was, they don't they normally don't walk and eat or drink at the same time, because to them that promotes. Someone explained this to me, and if I'm wrong, by any means, someone tell me. What was explained to me was, because when I went to Japan on vacation, I went from Korea to Japan, and when I landed in Tokyo, in TYC, I think it was called, I went and got, like, a drink, because Japan has all sorts of drinks, and since none of it has high fructose corn syrup, because it's banned in the country, I can drink whatever, because I actually have an allergy to high fructose corn syrup. And when I was in Japan, like, it was, like, super nice and everything, and, like, the people are, very kind. And I'm sure there's, turmoils and tribulations that people go through. But when I went there, I had someone approach me, like, excuse me, like, just in English, like, excuse me, are you an American? I go, yeah, what's up, man? He goes, hey, you shouldn't drink and walk. And I go, why is that? He goes, well, because it promotes, like, throwing it on the floor. And we don't want that. And their streets were pretty clean where I was at. So it's like, I looked, and, like, everybody who had a drink, they kept it in, or they put it in their little purse. And then when they stop at a light, they take a sip and put it back in. And I was like, oh, what a neat little thing. I think gum is also banned in Japan. I'm not 100% sure, or it was in another country. Yeah, gum. Because it's
Wow.
people finish it and they just, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no point in gum to me. I stopped chewing gum when I lived in Korea, because everybody was like, all my Katusas, my Korean augmentee soldiers of the United States, they were like, that's weird. But again, that was my experience. So, like, I took that, from there, and I took a lot of, like, different little things from everywhere I went. Iraq was the only place I didn't bring back anything, you know.
Well, what
But
was it like in Iraq for you?
I love this question because no one's ever brave enough to ask it. In what sense? You mean running missions? You mean the culture, or like
Both.
both? The culture is very different. They aren't very patriotic. They're not. It's just, what we did in Iraq was called PTT, Police Transitioning Team, which you train the Iraqi police and the Iraqi army to be cops and to be soldiers. And a lot of times we never had 100% accountability. People just wouldn't show up. Yeah, that was the thing in 2008, 2009. When we ran missions, we wouldn't tell them information. We'd just take them with us to pull security because we didn't trust them. And it was really nerve-wracking. I always tell people, like, if you want to imagine what's it like running missions in Iraq, the best way that I can describe it is imagine the street that you drive through every day, right? You go down the same street, you turn on the same, you go to the same place, you see the same things every day because it's your routine, right? Now imagine that at any point in time, unbeknownst to you and without your control, because you can't control how people feel, someone's going to shoot at you or put a bomb in the middle of the street, unbeknownst to you, just because you wear a different uniform or you have a different color of skin. So that's what running missions in Iraq was like. And the culture-wise, a lot of people were happy to see us. A lot of mahallas. We helped liberate a lot of mahallas. A lot of villages is what they call them. They're called mahallas. And, it felt good at the time. I thank God we never got in a situation where, we had to shoot somebody or get shot or get blown up. We were pretty smart about it. I had a guy that had been to war 7 times with me. My team leader alone, this was his 3rd time. And I think there was another guy that it was like his 5th time going to war. So, they were not out looking for to get a shiny medal or anything. They were just out to go back home, But that's the best way that I could describe when I was in Iraq for me, It was very nerve-wracking. So you age a lot for 15 months. I was
Yeah.
a driver, so.
And just the stress in itself. And, a lot of, who I know are veterans, and what they experience in the wars and whatnot is that PTSD, because of the trauma, what they saw, it goes in the subconscious, that it's a memory. It becomes a memory, and there's like emotion and energy attached to that.
It can be a lot of things. PTSD can come from a lot of things.
Yeah.
I think what the problem people have nowadays is some people care. Some people genuinely care. Some people genuinely care and they want to talk to you and they want to learn, kind of like you do. Other people don't. And what I always tell veterans is, when you talk about PTSD, I got diagnosed with it in, I think 2011, I think I got diagnosed with it because I wouldn't sleep. I had sleep issues. And I always thought it was just, I'm a very hyperactive person. I like to move around. I was like, maybe that's just what it is. And then they did some studies and they found whatever science medical thingy that something's not firing right, and I'm under treatment and whatnot. But I think the problem that people have with PTSD is understanding that it doesn't mean that I'm like looking for things or anything. It just means that I live my life a little bit different from people, right? Like, I'll give you an example. You notice that I'm behind a wall, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know that to my left, there's a door in a hallway. I know to my right, there's a door in a hallway and my kiddo's there. So, like, you're a little more aware of when you go into places. If someone comes to the house unannounced, that's normally not, I don't welcome that very well. So I always tell people, if you come to my house, you call me or you text me. It also means that you have to like really understand that there's going to be days that you're just going to have to push the fuck through. Because a lot of times you're going to wake up and something that to someone else might mean nothing, to you it means the world. Another thing I noticed with a lot of veterans, because I'm part of a group called We Defy Foundation, that it's basically they help veterans through Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And one of the things we do is that we give each other, our phone numbers in case anybody's ever struggling. I remember on my honeymoon, I got a call from a buddy, and he was like, "Man, I'm just gonna end it. Like, I can't do this anymore." And this was the moment that I told my wife, like, this could happen. And like, I told my wife, we're at our honeymoon. I was like, "Hey, I'll be right back." And that's part of it. It's just understanding that sometimes you're gonna have a day where like nothing really makes fucking sense, and you have to just, really have a routine and have a good circle around you. Because the thing with PTSD is that it's I like to call it the silent killer, because a lot of people don't want to realize that they have an issue. And post-traumatic stress can come from anything. I've seen rape victims, I've seen trafficking victims that they have problems sleeping, they have problems trusting doctors. That's a big one that most people don't realize. When a lot of these trafficking victims come to the States, getting them to get healthcare is a bitch. It's just a problem because they don't trust the doctors. I should tell you a lot about what they've been through if they're not willing to trust doctors. And
Right.
right now in our country, we're going through some stuff where we've had some issues and whatnot. But I always think that you can learn from everybody a little bit, right? And I remember when I was working trafficking cases, the number one thing that I remember was when these people trusted you, they trusted you. And that's a very sacred thing. And I think that's like the biggest thing in the veteran community that, at least in my experience, that has helped me is the trust that I have for people and how important it is. Like if someone tells me like, "Hey, don't tell this to anybody," dude, I'm taking that to my grave. I'm not telling my wife. There's a lot of stuff that I know about people that I'll take to my grave, because to me it's an honor when someone entrusts you with something. And again, as long as that's not endangering someone's life or endangering their own life, right? Because we have exigent circumstances, then I'll keep it. But the problem with PTSD is that a lot of people look at it as you're broken, and they will absolutely utilize it against you in court. I mean, shit, that happened to me. I had a custody case where they tried to bring up my PTSD, and there wasn't even a clinical psychologist involved or anything. It was just an attorney trying to use it against me. So that's why you have to be very careful. But for me, it's pretty empowering because I don't give a fuck. I know I have issues. I know what my issues are. I know what triggers my issues. I know what doesn't trigger my issues. I know when I wake up in the morning, there's going to be times that I'm going to need an hour to myself. There's going to be times I'm going to need 5 minutes to myself. There's going to be times that I don't want to do anything, but I still have to have that discipline to do it, and I got to have that circle with me that tells me, keeps me accountable,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the thing with PTSD that most people don't get, is that they think it's just the dude in movies and stuff like that that's like all crazy and stuff. And you get things like that, but let me tell you, if you got somebody that's to that point, that person's been asking for help, or at least in his own way, in his or her own way, they've asked for help in a certain way. People sometimes weren't educated enough or smart enough to realize it. That's why I live by.
Signs.
Well, yeah, because there's different signs for anything. You know what I'm saying? I could sit here and tell you, like me, for example, I know for a fact, like today, I had a buddy that Lee Berry, he was on my podcast, and he's a very good friend of mine. We hadn't heard about him for a few days, and we started getting worried. And me and Lee, like Lee's 60 something, and I'm 34. Me and him are like that. Like that dude's come to my house and done parties for free. He's a bartender. And come to find out, he had a stroke. And that like fucked me up because he called me. And you know how when how someone's had a fresh stroke, there's a side of their face that they can't move very well. So that's how he sounded, and it just broke my heart because it scared me, because we've lost a few guys that are close friends of mine, because all my friends are older than me. All my friends. I don't have any friends. I mean, my wife is 38, 39. I'm 34. My best friend, he's 39. My co-host, Eric, he's 50. So like everybody, I don't have any friends that are younger than me. Like, I really don't. So it's like, the people that I hang out with, they're going to leave me first. They're going to go back and I'm going to stay here. So, sometimes loneliness can trigger PTSD too. That's a thing that you got to watch out for. But in general, man, like if you notice, every email that I send or every interaction that I have with people, the first thing I ask is, how are you doing? And if I know someone's bullshitting me, I keep pushing the issue because I'm pretty good at smelling when someone's bullshitting me, when someone's not really okay. That's why I tell people, when they come on the podcast, I go, listen, be aware that it's unedited. Like if you say something, I'll give an example. Tommy Chong was saying, how fucked up the DEA was 10 minutes into the interview. Yeah. See that face? Like, I didn't think anything of it. Apparently iHeart was like, this, we got to check this. But, shout out to iHeartRadio, man. They, talking about loyalty, like those guys, when I went to talk to them, we did a commercial and she looked at me and she said, what are you trying to do? I said, in 10 to 15 years, I'd like to be the flagship podcast for iHeart. And she goes, okay. And dude, ever since then, I've had people like, no, you need to promote on multiple platforms. And we are on multiple platforms, but I want iHeart to be my home base. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? I think. Hopefully. Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question about PTSD. And I'm open to talk about it too. Like I always tell people, like, I can tell you what my experience is. I can't talk for other people.
You mentioned this because I know there's, we all suffer from PTSD.
Yeah.
It's how we choose to deal with it, how we choose to respond instead of react. Mm-hmm. And I've had a coach, Rihanna Milne, who actually studies the childhood trauma. And we list 10 categories of a form of PTSD. It could be, abuse. It could be community. When you go through hurricanes or earthquakes or...
Oh, yeah. I lived through Hurricane George. I don't know if I told you that. Yeah, I don't know if I ever said that.
That's traumatizing. Yeah. Anything
it was
traumatizing can create PTSD.
I also did this is funny. I also did search and rescue at a Joplin tornado that happened years ago. Made the news worldwide. I was one of the search and rescue guys there.
Oh wow! Even 9/11.
Oh yeah, that was
my birthday. So
yeah, that was man, it's funny. The thing that pisses me off the most wasn't even war. It wasn't even war because I knew what was going to happen. I volunteered to go to war. I graduated basic and like a week later, I got orders to go to Iraq. A month and a half, some change. Because you got to go to Kuwait first, right? It's a really long fucking flight. And you are not in the most comfortable position. You have your gun and everything, And I remember like, it was like, okay, like this is what we're going to do. But it was the shit that people do to each other here, like back here. There's no difference. Like to me, sometimes what human beings do to each other never ceases to like amaze me, and the reasons that they do it. And that's why I always try to like, as of recently, just live my life as like nothing really surprises me. And the other day, like I finally like, you ever understand something about yourself, but you can't like explain it in words, and you're like, son of a gun, like. And
every day.
Yeah. So the other day I was trying to explain to somebody because like I had someone lie to me recently about something, and I just treated them the same. And my wife and my friends were like, how can you put up with that? How do you let people talk to you like that? And I was like, listen, man, I know who I'm dealing with before I'm dealing with them, and I know it because I talk to people, and you can normally tell like a lot by how a person interacts. And the one thing that I tell people is, if a snake bites you, are you surprised? Probably not, right? Because that's the nature of the snake. It's going to bite you. So it's like, you bit me. Shit. So a liar's a liar. Why should you be surprised when the liar doesn't lie? Why should you be surprised when the thief steals from you? You know that the thief is going to steal from you. That should not surprise you. I think the problem we have is we create expectations of things. And to me, like I'm not, uh I'm not, attached to like really anything. I'm attached to a few things in this world, to my wife and my kids and my kid, uh, and to the people who help me. Those are things that I'm attached to, you know. But everything else, it's irrelevant for me to hold on to it. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
that's how I live life, and it makes things simple, man. Because if you remember what I told you earlier, it's like you got to really know yourself and like what makes you like tick. Like I showed you earlier, like my gi is already there and my belt is already there, ready to go. But the thing is like I know myself well enough to know how to prepare and how to do things. And to me, like I'm an over warrior. Everybody has a thing with their trauma and their issues. Like I like to be prepared for everything. I like to have money in the bank. I like to have money in this. I like to being on the know of things because I'm also a very curious person. I get bored very easily, you know. And I think that you asked me something earlier about you said something about martial arts that I practice them, and I don't think I practice them. I think I just live it, you know, because it's everything in life. It feels like it's like a thing you can live or it's a thing you can be. And to me, like when I got promoted in jiu-jitsu to purple belt, like I came to realize like, oh, okay, like I can really do this. I can fight, even though I still can't fight. Like you think you can fight, and then you get to this belt. And for me, it was like, oh, I really know nothing. But then me realizing that I don't know anything, I've seen how other people act tough, and I'm like, oh, you really know nothing. And it's a false sense of confidence. And a lot of people have that. And that's why I don't bother with a lot of people because some
Well,
people think they're lions when in reality they're bunnies.
well, part of martial art from history, there's a thing called qi kong, and it's the way the movement and how you get your
Mm,
energy. That's
yeah,
what I
like your
was
energy and
getting to. Isn't that part of how martial arts is? It's also about disciplining, not acting out of anger, but it's just movements.
in general, yeah. The problem is that that's a philosophy. And the thing is most martial arts, you can't really go 100% and and practice everything because if I punch you at 100% of my force, right, you're going to get knocked out.
Mhm.
But let me tell you, in jiu-jitsu I can go 100% and I don't have to hurt you. If I really wanted to hurt you, I could. The thing is, I don't have to. So jiu-jitsu is like one of the very few martial arts where you can practice that. And I tell my wife all the time, like my wife sometimes like she'll mess with me and like do things, and I'm just like beeping and moving around, and she can't like touch me. I'm like, go ahead and try to grab me, and she's like, I can't, and I'm like, there's a reason for that. And again, she doesn't know anything, so I'm just messing with her. But if you saw the people that I train with at the gym, and you see how I get manhandled, you probably come to a realization that, oh yeah, see, your face is like, you really like, yes, I can introduce you to 130-pound old man that is my age that could probably make me look like a child. And I have seen him grab a 300-pound man, the same belt as him, and him make him look like a child. That's scary to me that there's someone out, and I've trained with this person and I felt like a child. And it's very disheartening to learn that there is someone out there that if they really, if God forbid, I love Kyle, man, and that's why I always stay with the association. Um, thank God he has a good heart. Cause dude, there's people that I see the best people that I know are like the most dangerous people in the world too. It's what's funny to me. Like Kyle Terra, like he's a guy that he's so calm, and Kyle will like roast you. Like Kyle will just like I walked up to him one day. I said, "Well, muito obrigado, professor." I said, thank you for everything, professor. And he looks at me. He goes, Rick, the good news is from here on out, your Portuguese can only get better. It cannot get worse, my friend. And I just like I you 130 but see, that's your ego talking, right? You get upset,
Mhm.
but that's like the most compliment that you'll get out of him, you know?
I remember
That's,
the Karate Kid with Ralph Macchio. And what's
oh
his name?
yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. I love, yeah, Ralph and stuff like that.
Wax on, wax
Wax
off.
off. And you know what's funny, man, is like sometimes people gotta understand too, like people are a little bit scared of chaos sometimes. And you gotta understand, man, like, you know, I'm heavily obese right now, even though it doesn't look like it. And like I've been working out and like you have to have something in your life where you can put that energy into. Because what happens is if you don't, like you know how it is, man. You keep pouring water, right? If I keep pouring water into this, the Purell, like because we're on the podcast table, by the way, like we have Purell, we have
A
notebook, we
shout
got
out to
pen.
Pharrell.
Dude, it's funny. In basic training when I went, you're issued 5 bottles of Purell that are specifically made to fit in like your we used to put them on a right pant pocket. And dude, I that's why my hands are like crap. Like my hands are so dry all the time, but I always wash my hands and stuff and I refuse to use lotion because to me I have to have manly hands, you know, like whatever
Manly
that means.
hands.
That's my ego talking. But there's like certain things that'll allow that. I'm like, you know what? And honestly, it's more like I don't like my hands when they look like that. They just I don't know. I feel like they look fragile, you know, and I could be wrong, but I like when my
Well,
hands look
not why
rough.
not try coconut oil then?
Um, I have, but then like I keep going like this to like just because I love this. It's like a weird thing to say, but I swear to you, I'm not kidding. It's like I'll put coconut. I'm like, oh, this is so good. And like, please, like, nothing, guys. What's up? And I'll start touching my beard. Right, I'll start going like this. No, I swear to you, I can't control it. I try to control, and I go, oh, that smells good. Like coconut oil smells amazing.
Oh, then
Cocoa butter
dude,
too.
you gotta try the sheer moisture.
You sure?
I'm
Yeah,
giving
sheer
a shout
moist.
out up to sheer moisture.
Hey, you
It's
never know.
coconut and hibiscus.
Really, that's interesting.
Oh, that oil, you could use it as massage oil, body oil. I use it for massaging and for my skin. And oh my God,
Interesting.
when I put it on, the smell, I'm like, wow. And everyone's,
Yeah,
wow,
like
you smell good. I'm like, oh, it's my oil.
yeah, yeah. That's my thing with coconut oil, but it also doesn't work as well for me. It really doesn't. It really doesn't. And the problem is, you know, I've been working construction since I was like, you know, I used to work construction, and then I did a little bit of stuff here and there, and like you know, you don't clean your hands very well, and now you have like that stuff on it. So, but you know, man, it's all about you gotta like. I always tell people like when people ask me, it's like you talk about this and you talk about that. I'm like, but you do this and you do that. I'm like, well, here's the thing: is I know what I'm willing to sacrifice, and I'm okay with it. Because in life, you got to make a sacrifice. Like, you know, if I want eggs, I got to take some eggs from a chicken. I got to break the egg and I got to cook it. You know, it's
Mhm.
the same in life. Like, I understand that, you know, training the way that I train and doing the stuff that I do, like, my body's going to take a toll for it. But, you know, I learned how to move more efficiently. This is the thing. And the older you get, I think the older a person gets, I think that's what, like, I've always, like, identified with all my friends being older, like I was telling you earlier, is because I like to move efficiently. I'm not trying to be the fastest. I don't care about being the strongest. I care about being somewhere in between and
Mhm.
figuring out how to get there. Because I've always felt like if you're the smartest person in the room, like you would just hate yourself, or you would just hate being there in general. You know, I've always felt like that. And I'll tell you what, ever since I realized that I know nothing, I fit pretty well doing everything. It's like the weirdest thing to me. It's like the
Well,
moment I learned, like, I hold control of nothing.
well,
So,
in some aspect, it's like when you think and believe like you know everything. I mean, come on, we were teenagers, when
mm,
we sort of rebelled against our parents. It's like we knew more than them, but in
mm,
reality, we didn't. And you mentioned earlier, you know, not knowing anything and realizing. as you get older, your beliefs change. And then you realize, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that, I thought that, or I did that. What was I thinking? It's just part of a process of experiencing life. And then you realize what really works and what doesn't work.
I think for me, it was a little bit more different because I've always tried to like put myself in other people's shoes in other circumstances because my dad, ever since I was a kid, my dad had many sayings. One of the things that always struck me is he goes, "A smart man learns from his mistakes. A wise man learns from another person's mistakes." And I was like, "That's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard, Dad. Shut your mouth." And I actually said that, and I regret saying that because it's kind of like in business, like business should be a long-term game, if not a lifelong game. And ever since I discovered when I do things that have no end, I stick with them, right? So you notice I've done a lot of things, but a lot of them I haven't stuck with them. And it was honestly because I felt like I had attained the necessary, I had learned the lessons I needed to learn, and I was pretty good at like realizing, okay, like this is done. And as a kid, I remember, being very young, like my mom wasn't around, so it was my stepmom. And I remember as a kid, like being 8 or 9, I remember going, it takes a lot of balls for somebody that's not even related to me to care so much. I should probably care about this person. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it was never a matter of really understanding, oh, this change and that change. It was more, I look at the world in a way of like, huh, that's curious. I wonder why that's happening. And then the way that I navigate is as long as I'm doing something that's not hurting anybody, that's not illegal, and that's not illegal in any way, I'm going to go do it. But I also have to find something that I feel very happy doing and that I can do every day and that I'm willing to die on that sword for that. And I think like that's the difference between myself and like a lot of other people, that they'll say they'll die on that sword, but they haven't probably been through enough things or thought of enough scenarios of, hey, are you willing to die at that sword? And to me, it's like a clear example of that is like when I hear people say, I want to have kids. Well, what if that kid's a piece of shit? Are you going to love him? All right. What if the kid becomes into a murderer? Are you going to love him? What if, God forbid, that kid ends up hating you for whatever reason because maybe they've been told something and analyzing, like, would you still love him? It's like, if the answer is yes, then yeah, by all means, because if the truth is the truth is going to come out, right? And to me, if I'm doing the right thing because it's the right thing, no matter what anybody tells me, because I know that it's the right thing. Because that's the other thing is sometimes, someone may have some information about something that you don't know. And like a lot of times, I've had that happen with friends where they, made a statement or made a comment about something. I'm like, why are you saying that? They're like, well, I know something. Okay, cool. You can't say it. No, but that something is something that would probably change a lot of people's minds. Well, yeah. Like, okay, cool. No problem. Clear example is like what happened with Afghanistan when it was taken over so fast. If you notice, there's not a lot of veteran friends posting things saying, oh my God, we didn't know about this. What a lot of veterans are saying is like, yeah, we kind of told you. Because like I said in the beginning, like there's not a lot of patriotism. You know what I'm saying? So again, it goes to the thing again. If you know
Well,
that the liar's a liar, go ahead.
since you brought that up,
Yeah.
um, because my partner is all into the history of war,
Mm-hmm.
and he explained something to me. He's like, well, of course that's going to happen. The Taliban comes in and takes over Afghanistan, and the thing about it is our soldiers were there for almost what, 20 years?
20, yeah.
How
That's
much
just food on
money
ground.
were we paying in that
Oh,
20-year period as tax-paying citizens? And then he said, he goes, because the Afghanistan, they're really not into fighting.
no, they're not.
I'm like, well, then why did we spend all this time there? Then how can I get mad over somebody that's really not interested in protecting their own community, city, their own little territory,
Their own home,
their own home
but we
from
get
these
upset.
people? And I
Correct.
was just like, are you kidding me? Then why did we spend all this time over there? Why did we spend all this money? And then the Taliban has all our equipment that we paid for, all that equipment, the guns, the machinery, and all that. We paid for that.
But here's the other issue too. And I like to play devil's advocate on everything. Because again, remember what I said, like it's a this for that. It's kind of like alchemy. That's why I love alchemy. Like I'm very fascinated by alchemy, even though I don't
Me
read
too.
much about it. But the underlying principle of alchemy and in science is there has to be an equivalent exchange, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's an equivalent exchange? Are you willing to like stab somebody for a cooler? Are you willing to do this? Okay, then you value human life at this level, right? The problem with pulling out of Afghanistan is that it's now a territory that pretty much won't know 100% what's going on. They might make some friends that, we probably shouldn't let them be friends with because that could turn into a problem. But my whole philosophy is like, well, I'm not versed enough in politics to say, well, this could be a problem. This may not be a problem. But I do know one thing. Afghanistan is one of the top 10 producers of opium. And they also have poppy seeds. They have very, very large fields of marijuana. Yeah, most people don't know that. So
Wow.
you also have to understand that. And then on top of that, you also have to understand it's located in a geographical area that you can put a lot of stuff in it. You never know what's going to happen. So, yeah, we pulled out and there are repercussions to that. However, will those repercussions reach us? I don't know.
But here's
I'm
the
not
thing.
versed enough.
Here's the thing that my partner also shared with me. He goes, watch. Do you remember what happened in Vietnam?
Correct. Yeah. I know where you're
Okay.
going. Yeah.
Okay. Now they're very prosperous. We haven't had any issues since
Well,
then. And they changed their way of thinking of, hey, we can't be doing this because the U.S. is going to come and kick our ass. And, we've already learned our lesson. What if the Taliban wants to be on the good gracious now and make it a money making little country, whatever? Because now you mentioned opium, poppy seeds, and all this. They see hey, this is a money making business opportunity. We can come in, and eventually that's what it's like, history repeating itself.
It's so funny because I wrote a joke about this a while back.
Oh,
It's so
really?
funny to me that you're having the exact same thought process that I had in a joke that I wrote a while back saying, hey, man, don't worry. One of two things are going to happen with the Taliban. They're either going to kill themselves and blow themselves up because they don't know how to handle our equipment, or they're just going to get really high and become entrepreneurs. Like, we don't know. Either way, we're all going to win. And like I said that, a lot of people laughed. Some people looked at me like I was an asshole. But it's funny to me because that's a possibility. But the problem is, and again, I'm not versed enough in history, is, man, these people have been fighting for hundreds of years. And that's all they know. And the problem is in order for you to break a cycle or to break something in history, Something extreme has to happen.
Yes.
I'll give Cuba as an example, right? I don't know if you've been following what's been happening in Cuba. It's pretty crazy. There's people still rioting that they don't want, socialism and stuff like that, or they don't.
Communist.
Let me rephrase that. It's not even that they don't want socialism, because then it turns into an argument of this and that. They're not happy with the lifestyle that they're living in their culture anymore, and enough people are complaining that they don't want to live like that the government doesn't want to enact change. So that happened obviously for various reasons. Number one, they have the internet now. Recently, in recent years, they've discovered internet and stuff like that. But, sometimes a very big change has to happen in order for a drastic change to happen, right? Because it has to be equivalent exchange. So I don't know, man. I'd like to think that joke is funny that, 20 years from now, there's not even going to be enough Taliban because they keep killing themselves with our equipment that they can't maintain. It just keeps blowing up. Or they just start smoking drugs and doing drugs and become entrepreneurs. Like, that seems to be the thing. I don't know. I
I
really don't
just
know.
feel like when he said that to me, and then I realized, I'm like, oh my God, you're right. Vietnam is now historical,
Mm-hmm.
And
I have a friend in Vietnam.
It's very, prosperous. They're prospering. They have resources that they,
Yeah.
with fair trade and whatnot. So
they're still learning,
I
though.
don't want opium, and we're trying to, against drugs. And there's been news about the opium, epidemic with, more suicides with younger generations and whatnot. So my thing is, okay, can you figure out something else to be prosperous over in that country?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
It doesn't have
The
to
question,
be negative, because that, to me, you're putting more harm out there. And this has been going on way too long. So why not think of something? What can we do to create something that's a win-win that helps mankind?
I mean, let's put a McDonald's, give them internet, and put a brothel. I mean, let's Vegas take care of it. Maybe it'll change. I don't know.
A brothel. I was like, I was gonna say, hey, why not have a swingers club over there?
Hey, there you see, you put a brothel and it solves a lot of problems. Let people in Vegas run it. I'm just saying, put a McDonald's too. Anywhere, listen, anywhere. If you really look this up, anywhere that there's a McDonald's, we have a treaty with or we get along with. Maybe McDonald's is secretly financing war. I don't know, man.
Food ever.
It's the most
except for the
disgusting
French
food
fries.
ever. Except for
the French fries, I'll eat. But that's it. I will not eat anything else. Just
I had like their grilled chicken and a lettuce one time. Like that's what I did one time, and I was like, yeah, whatever. Probably gonna get cancer from this, but whatever. I don't know. Like, I think there's a lot of things. Here's the thing: there's a lot of things that can be said, but the problem is that there has to be a spark and change. And I don't know if it's coming. I don't know.
I'm curious because I'm a history geek, and the Far East and the Sumerian writings, cuneiform, and on these tablets and whatnot. My question is, in Afghanistan, what history and artifacts are there that's yet to be discovered?
Oh, that's a great question.
Museums do they have? Do they have any? Why don't they go on an extravagant or what archaeology, geology, whatever those people do to discover, look up the history and say, okay, well, in this time, 95,000 years ago, that would be something of interest to me.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't see that happening. I know that we recently discovered that humans actually were here way longer than we thought. I know that we're discovering that the Amazon has a lot of spots that we're now uncovering with like LiDAR. I was just reading a book about it. And I know at least in Puerto Rico, we've uncovered different type of what we call SETI, which is like little artifacts that the Indians, the Taínos, made. The Taínos was the indigenous tribe in Puerto Rico when it was called Boriquén before the Spaniards took over. They were great agriculturers.
And there were pirates that went to Puerto Rico.
Yes, there actually was pirates. Did you also know that there are such thing as samurai pirates?
No.
Yes, and ninjas are not real. I had a samurai historian tell me that on the podcast. Samurai pirates were a thing. The samurai became nautical and ended up going to South Korea and invading all the way up to Seoul. They killed thousands of people. They've never gotten over that.
Wow.
Yeah, see, that face right there that you made is the reason why I do a podcast, because I want to see that face on everybody. When he told me that, I literally like almost had a heart attack. I was like, what the fuck did you say to me? What do you mean ninjas aren't real? You take those words back. And then he's like, no. Listen, historically, da-da-da-da-da-da. And then what's funny is this dude's name's Michael Wart. It's episode 21. I kid you not. That same week, I'm sitting with my cousin watching TV, and my cousin goes, is that Michael? I go, what? And I look up. He's on Netflix. Yeah, wow. He's on Netflix on the Bushido show for Netflix, explaining the exact same thing that he was telling us. And I did not know that. So I messaged him. I go, hey, were you on Netflix? Oh, yeah, I thought you knew. No. Don't ever assume that I know anything.
Assume is you make an ass out of you and me both.
Me both. Yep, that's what's up.
And so wait a minute. Then let me ask you this. Where did ninjas come up? Where did that?
It was a family. It was a family that had a scroll that they had said that it survived thousands of decades and stuff like that. That it was like ancient knowledge passed down, and like they were trying to get like money from the head of whatever the government and stuff like that. And the government's like, yeah, whatever. Shut the fuck up. Like, we would have heard about this. Shut up. There's no history. There's no data. These pages look like they're not even like 5 days old. Like there's a lot of data that indicates that.
Okay, so something just came back. Like I had a flashback memory of watching this movie, and they were not, I want to say, assassins.
Mm-hmm. Assassins are real.
Okay. Well, not that in that way, but in his
okay, my bad. Okay, this when we were totally not thinking about the same thing. I was like, oh yeah, I've met. Oh yeah, you.
But they were dressed up in black, and they would climb walls, and they would accept like mission.
Assassin Ninja. It's on Netflix. It's Assassin Ninja or something like that. It's on Netflix. I know what you're talking about. I've seen that movie hundreds of times. I love it. The guy like sleeps on a bed with like spikes, and he like lifts himself up, and this chick on I think the IRS. No, not the IRS. Was it the IRS or the FBI? She discovers him. I know the movie you're talking about. Love that movie.
Is there some truth to back in the days of where they created this like organization?
Yeah, samurais did.
A secret society.
Yeah, samurais absolutely did. If I recall correctly, samurais did have what they called assassination squads, which they would carry out. They were contracted out to carry out political assassinations, I think. Well, I'm not 100%, but I'm 90% sure me and Michael talked about this because I'm huge into samurais. Mm-hmm. Like samurais are like, it fascinates me. And one of the other things I had heard,
Reeves played a samurai in a
Ronin
movie.
47, correct? Yeah.
So I'm like connecting the dots here. I'm like, wait a minute, hold up.
But yeah, there's always been, even the cartel. They have sicarios, who carry out assassinations and stuff like that. There's always been a need for, it goes again, like where there's light, there's darkness. Wherever there's light, it's going to cast shadow over something. So there's always been like things like that don't surprise me. Like things like that really don't. I mean, I remember in Iraq, we caught a kid one time at a checkpoint, and everything, he didn't talk. He didn't say anything. The dog didn't even scare him. And I remember like a few weeks later, because when you're a private, you don't hear things at the moment. You hear something later. A few weeks later, Sergeant Charles was like, "Hey, you remember that kid we picked up?" Because I was the one. It was me and Sergeant Charles who picked him up. He was like standing at the wheel, and like one of the we didn't have the interpreter was like back there, and like one of the IAs, Iraqi army, said, "Hey, we're looking for him," and he's like, "Yalla," which means get out. And as soon as you hear "Yalla," like gun comes up, and he had a bunch of passports. He had like books with learning languages. He had he had different guns with silencers, and I was like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "Yeah, that's what he did." And I was like, "That's scary." That was like my first experience realizing that things like that could be real.
Well, that's like Born Identity with Matt Damon. Hello.
Oh yeah, that don't surprise me. That don't
It
surprise me
makes you.
anymore.
I question when I see movies like that's a government thing, and you
Yeah.
don't. It doesn't surprise me that you. And what's very upsetting to me is like when you become into that military, into that organization, you're doing it as I want to protect my country, I want to serve my country, but then your own will turn its back on you and assassinate your ass too.
I don't know about the latter part because not to my knowledge, I don't know if that happening. I'm sure, we could use recent examples. But I look at it like from a fundamental point of view of like there's a lot of things that you could do for your country. And I look at it as like everybody has their own definition of serving. And by all means, I know that there's been historical events where we've had to exchange prisoners for people. Like, I think back during the Cold War, we had a guy who was spying on Russia, and the fucking plane got hit, and we had to exchange. I think at the end of the day, I look at it as sometimes well-intended people use ill-intended methods. And the thing is that unfortunately, that's just the way life is. As long as we're with each other, that's why I try to be as open and as like direct. Like I don't care what people think anymore. Like if I'm doing something and someone doesn't think it's correct, I'll gladly explain. But at the end of the day, I'm not gonna hate you. I'm not gonna, I'm just not
Right.
gonna pay no mind. And that's, to me, that's a respect thing too, because everybody's a human being. Everybody has a different way of seeing things.
Mhm.
And if we can't like respect that, then cool, you stay in your own group. That's why I told you before we started the show, like a lot of people think I'm extroverted. I fucking hate going out. I got like 4 people that I mess with. That's it.
Right.
I don't go anywhere. I stay here. If I want to watch TV, I got a 75-inch TV. I watch TV there. I don't like going out. No, I don't. I got a little couch right there. Not a lot of stuff that you saw. I have my medication, my vitamins and stuff. I take a ton of stuff that get blood work done, by the way. Don't know if you ever had blood work done to tell you like the deficiencies you have.
Hmm.
Oh my God, it's life changing. VA just started doing that. And it's so good. Like once you can figure out like what you're down on and what you need and calibrate it, it's amazing.
Wow.
But that's the thing is like I don't worry about these things, man. I worry about Here's what I worry about. I worry about, is my kid okay? What can I do to help my kid? I worry about how can I stay in shape and how can I, be the best version that I can for, my homies and for my wife and for my family. And I worry if my people are doing good. That's it. Like my people. And then after that, then the rest is, what can I do to impact or make the place where I live a better place? Because if you don't like where you live, if you're talking shit about the place where you live, man, you shouldn't be there.
Well, not only that, but you're just adding more fuel to the fire, or
Yeah, you're
you're
not doing
actually
anything.
cursing, you're speaking something into existence.
Yeah,
Well, if you don't like
yeah,
what you're seeing, why don't
yeah,
you be the one to step up and change it?
yeah. And there's also a thing with that has to be said that doesn't mean that everywhere is perfect. You know what I'm saying?
But we could
Doesn't mean
strive
we
for.
can strive for perfection. That is correct. Now, my whole thing has always been is like know what you're willing to put up with. And that's honestly, that's like the best advice I can tell anybody. It's like know what you're willing to put up with and know what you're not willing to put up with. And learn what you are willing to put up with, because Shang Tzu, there's an old saying in The Art of War, out of the thousands that there are, is like the man who knows himself wins every battle. So if you know yourself and nobody can fuck with you, like
Well,
you've won everything.
sometimes the real battle is up in here.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's why he says that, is because you got to like really know yourself. Because if you know yourself, that's the thing that like cracks me up with people, is like if you show people that you just don't care, it hurts them so much more. All this thing about talking shit about each other and that you see people doing the news and like in the media, that's gonna phase
It's
out real soon.
nonsense. It's
Well,
just more negativity
it's more
energy.
negativity, and what's gonna happen one day is that's gonna get escalated. A celebrity's gonna say something about another celebrity, someone's gonna get stabbed, and then they're gonna be responsible for it. And
Oh,
I'm
I've
telling you,
already
it'll
seen that
fly.
happen in the past, and I'm like, oh my God,
But that's
when
the
are we
thing.
gonna
The
wake up
past,
from listening? And when are we gonna wake up to realize that history keeps repeating itself because we're creating that energy to keep replaying itself
the
and
moment,
passing it
the
on
moment that
down to our
people,
future generations.
yeah, I think that'll happen the moment that people realize that it's a necessary thing to do, because people, unfortunately, the majority of people do things out of necessity, out of last minute necessity, not because they care. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
Well, the thing about it is that they're also living in a false identity of who they truly are because
Yeah.
of a program, a limited belief, and because of religion.
Yeah. That's
You
why
are
I said,
God, Rico, in this human being. You're a spiritual being, a sexual being inside this human being.
mhm.
So you are altogether God. The kingdom of heaven is in you. How are you expressing and experiencing heaven here on earth?
That makes a lot of sense. That's pretty nice. The problem is, again, is like a lot of people they live with their ego. And don't get me wrong, you got to have a little bit of an ego, you
But
know?
you could choose to be either an ego God, because that's shown in history, or a host of God. The ego of God is controlling, dominating, manipulating, greed, power.
Yeah. I see what you
Okay,
mean.
and the host of God is serving others, showing compassion and love and nurturing. There's two aspects of ego and host. And we're all gods, but we're taught that we're not. God is an outside source, but no, God is everywhere in everything, including you, including me. I'm just a female form of God.
I think the problem that a lot of people have is that a lot of people confuse sometimes. Like sometimes you got to cut people. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Sometimes you got to just cut people. And they may see it as you being an asshole, and they may see you as, as a bad god or whatever they want to think.
Hmm.
But the reality is that sometimes people don't see their own naiveness, you know,
Or ignorance or
or their
arrogance.
own ignorance or their own error. And that's what's hard. That's what's hard sometimes. But I think it'll change, man. I think we're at a point in society where pretty soon there's going to be a big change. I
Oh,
think there will.
it's already happening.
Yeah. People start eating their own. Well, listen, this has been extremely fun.
Yes, and I enjoyed it. And the one more thing is,
Yeah.
For the veterans, I've had Michael Myers, he's from Vietnam War.
Hmm.
And I know from studies being a coach about epigenetics, hypnotherapy,
Hmm.
that researchers and scientists have discovered on how to help veterans overcome that emotional energetic trauma through hypnotherapy and epigenetics. So I'm putting that out there to, the veterans when I speak to a veteran, like, because I really want the healing of that trauma for you guys, because I couldn't even imagine of what, you guys have been through as soldiers and experiencing being trained to kill is not actually really in our nature, but to have to be trained to do that, I commend all of you. And if this is a way to help you guys heal so you can become the best version of yourself, so you could start living your best life now instead of being a prisoner to that, by all means, I'm speaking it. And
That's
thank
good
you for
info.
being on
No,
the
I
show.
appreciate that. That's good to know. I was thinking about that. I never heard of that. Heard of cognitive therapy and stuff, but man, I appreciate you. I appreciate you doing this. I do. And seems like you got a really good show. You're a great listener. Very great listener. Very good. You ask very good questions that most people are a little shy to ask about, or maybe a little intimidated. I've had a few podcasters tell me that it sounds intimidating to ask me certain questions. I'm like, no, don't say that, please. I'm very nice. I promise.
But I'm just inquisitive by nature. I'm curious by nature, just like you. So I'm not afraid to ask the question. And I've heard professors and teachers, no question is stupid or silly. How do you know unless you ask?
Well, I appreciate you doing this, and I know you're going to be on our show pretty soon.
Yes, I can't wait.
I'm pretty excited to have you. So thank you so much for having me. And if anybody ever needs anything, you can find me on Facebook on Richard Aviles. I'm on TikTok as Richard Aviles 51. And if you want to hear some interesting stuff and enjoy listening to me running my mouth, listen to our podcast, the Rico Podcast. It's everywhere, Spotify, but iHeart is where I'm trying to navigate to, because they've been very good to us. They've been more than
I
kind
wish you the best of success, and this was such an honor and a pleasure, and I learned something new too. So I'm always excited to learn something new.
I appreciate it. You have a good day, and thank you so much.
And good luck in your class today. Well, there you go. Oh my gosh, I learned something new today with Rico, and you can check him out on iHeartRadio, Rico's podcast. And once again, you never know who I'm going to get on my show. So tune in to Wake Up with KC.
Do you agree that, it's time that we all wake up and take responsibility, even for our ancestors that did not know any better?
Been waiting patiently to have this kind of conversation.